Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to talk about trusting yourself, what it is, what it looks like, and why it truly is the key to your freedom. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Flora Sage, minimalism mentor, simplification coach, and 7-time author. For over 25 years, I've been helping women like you align into a life or a business that you are wildly obsessed with by helping you clear the 9 types of clutter keeping you from a life that you love. What are those 9 types of clutter? They are mental, spiritual, emotional, digital, financial, daily, body, process, and environmental clutter. My YouTube page is where I share environmental decluttering tips, and here on the podcast, I share with you how to declutter the rest. Please subscribe or follow this feed so you get notified every time an episode is released. And today, we're going to talk about trusting yourself. So, what is trusting yourself? What does it look like? And why is it a key to your ultimate freedom in life? With that said, I have a story. In late 2000, yes, that was 24 years ago. In late 2000, I went to marriage counseling for my first marriage. And at the end of one of the sessions, the therapist asked me, she said, if this relationship doesn't work out, do you trust that you're going to be okay? I couldn't answer that question. I didn't have an answer. And I was shocked that I didn't have an answer, that my mind was completely blank. And she said, that's okay. Just think about this. Come back next week and we'll talk. So over the course of the next week, I recognized and tried to acknowledge all of the things that I had done in my life, like all the accomplishments. And I had finished school after my stepmom kicked me out, and I had to work a full-time job so that I could pay for rent. I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps when I was 17, and I graduated boot camp on my 18th birthday. I carried and delivered 2 healthy boys. One of them, I did natural childbirth. That was incredible. I went skydiving. I had a successful job. I was building a successful business. And I realized, I'm like, wow, I've accomplished so much. I learned how to drive. That's an accomplishment. And I was shocked that I had overlooked all the things that I had done so far. So that next week, I came back to her and I said, yes, I do trust that I'm going to be okay. I know deep down that I was always meant to be a mom. And I know that if I need help, I'll be able to find resources to help me. And I also, have a family that can help me out as well. So that marriage ultimately ended up not working. And I had 2 marriages besides that didn't work either. My first one was 6 years. My second one was 4 months. And my third one was 8 years. And I never considered them failures. And I've had people make comments on videos and podcast episodes before about, all the things that come with 3 divorces. And with that, I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. It wasn't like I threw in the towel after a couple months, the 4-month one, and it was just not a healthy, not a good dynamic between us. And I always showed up 100% for myself and for my partner. And after my 3rd divorce, I knew that there was something that I was missing that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. I was in some type of therapy or counseling the entire time that I was in all 3 marriages, trying to figure out what I could do to help make the relationship and the marriage better. And nothing was sticking. So I prayed to my peeps for a solution, and I said, I'm going to stop all therapy. I'm going to stop all self-help until I find that simple solution, that simple answer of why my relationships are wonky. Shortly after that, I realized that I was codependent. I was having lunch with one of my friends, and we were talking about relationship woes and whatnot, and she said, you do realize that you're codependent, right? And I was like, wait, what? And I Googled it, and she goes, "You're a certified life coach." I said, "Yes, I have 3 certifications." And I said, none of them mentioned codependency, which was shocking. So when I realized I was codependent and I was reading all the descriptions and I was like, "Oh my God, yes." And she's like, "I've never seen anybody excited to be codependent." I said, "No, you don't understand. Now I know how to fix my relationship stuff, And this was one of the best days of my life. And so I did this self-work up to that point that kept coming up. But like I said, it was this process of, wow, okay, it's a relationship thing. It's a relationship. I worked on my communication. I worked on my love languages. I did all the things, but the relationships were not improving. So I knew that there was a piece of the self-work that I was missing. Once I identified it accurately, aka figured out it was codependency, then I had clarity on how to fix that particular thing. So during this process, as I was digging through my codependency stuff and all the things that come up when you're doing that process, I realized that there was other areas of my life where I didn't trust myself. So I leaned into those areas so that I could understand why I didn't trust myself. And I realized I had some major abandonment issues. My mom passed away when I was 12, suddenly in a car accident. And then a year and a half later, my dad got married. And it felt like that I had lost him as well. And then at 15, I got kicked out by my stepmom. So, I worked on that. And then I slowly realized that the more honest I got with myself about the things that I had been avoiding, the more I began to trust myself. The more I listened to my heart, I began to trust myself. The more I got clear on what I wanted, I began to trust myself. The more I got clear on my truth and my purpose on this planet, the more I trusted myself. The more willing I got to say no to the things that I didn't like and that I didn't want to do, the more I learned to trust myself. And the more intentional I became. And the more intentional I became, the more I trusted myself. So my question for you is, do you trust yourself? Right now, in this very moment, do you trust yourself? Now, it's easy to not trust yourself because when we have failures in life, it's easy to start saying, oh shit, like I made that decision and it didn't turn out. I met and married this person and now got a divorce. They were not the one. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. I got a job, but I got fired or I got laid off or I got this job that I thought it was going to be perfect and it sucks. Oh my goodness. Making a decision and having it not work out really puts a damper on your trust for yourself. Failure of any kind can do this to you. Now, in my house, failure is not a word. It is not a word. We simply just say, that didn't work out. Let me try something else. That's it. So I ask you today, what do you want? And what do you think is preventing you from having it? And this is a big one. What are you avoiding? And do you know what your purpose is? How well do you know yourself? Not the version of yourself that your parents told you that you are, or that your caregivers told you that you are. Oh, that person's really shy. She's really shy. So they said that about me. Oh, she's really shy. Bullshit. I am a outgoing introvert. Just because you're an introvert does not mean that you're shy. I am an outgoing introvert, okay? If I don't like you, I'm not going to talk to you, okay? If you got bad vibes, I'm going to pull back. And that's what I did as a kid. I've been able to read energy since I came out of my mom's womb. And there was people in my life as a kid that I was like, not so much, no. And because I pulled back, they didn't like that. So they said, oh, she's shy. They made an excuse for me saying I was one way. They labeled me a certain way. So what labels do you have that you really don't identify with? They're just like, no, I'm not shy. I'm very outgoing. I'm an introvert because going out in public with a lot of people drains my energy. For some people, it fuels them, and that's beautiful for them. But how well do you know yourself? And again, not what your parents have labeled you, not what your caregivers have labeled you, not what your pedigree or who your pedigree says who you are, not the version of yourself that you created to be liked by the world or by a partner. That's a big codependent trait, being a chameleon and conforming into the environment that we're in. But how well do you really know yourself to the core? Learning to trust yourself is about slowing down enough so that you can hear your own truth and that you can hear yourself, that true inner dialogue, the observer who observes your thoughts, the observer who sees you in the mirror. It's that higher version of yourself. It's about asking all the questions. We had lots of questions in the previous episode. It's about asking all the questions and then answering those questions. And then asking the questions that come up from the answers that you just answered. So you got questions, then you got answers. And when you read those answers, more questions are going to pop up. Why am I codependent? Where did this start? Who do I feel codependent around? So you have the first series of questions and the first series of answers. Take those answers. What questions now come up because of these answers? And you keep doing this. You keep asking yourself these questions, giving yourself and sharing answers. And then based on that, what new questions come up now? What new answers? Based on those answers, do you have any new questions? And this is truly how you get to know yourself. And it's also just digging past the mask of ego and finding out who you are, what you want, and removing all that's blocking you from having it. And it's about also owning who you are and not compromising that for anyone. Not compromising who you are for anyone. I remember seeing this video from Brene Brown, and she says, when I am in a situation or in a conversation or in a room and I can be myself, I belong there. But the second that I feel like I have to compromise who I am and change who I am for that room or for that conversation or for that person, I no longer want to be there. No, and I remove myself. And that is exactly what this work does. I want you to think about the most confident, the happiest, and the most grounded person that you know. Think about that person. What are their traits and their characteristics? Chances are, if you ask them about who they are, like, hey, who are you? Like, what is your purpose in life? They're going to tell you without hesitation because they've done the work. And that is the result of doing the self-work that we spoke about in last week's episode. It's about learning to trust yourself enough so that you know that what you want is perfect for you and your life. No explanation needed. I want this. Full stop, no explanation. If someone demands an explanation of why you want what you want, their ego's coming in, they're triggered. That is not for you to deal with. That is not for you to justify what you truly want in your life. When you do this, when you really get to know yourself at a core cellular level, you will know who you are, what your purpose is, and you begin to trust yourself at a level that you can't even comprehend right now. When you're willing, so this truly is the biggest thing. When you're willing to face the things that you've been avoiding, your whole life opens up. True freedom will happen. This is truly when you will feel the freedom that you've been craving and that you never even knew was available. Like, that's just the thing, is that when I started to do this work, and I did all the work while I was married, and then when I did my codependency work, I worked on the codependency stuff, and then I worked on my abandonment issues, which they went hand in hand for me. When I got so deep into the thick of it. Now, I have some resources. I'll post the CODA resources in the links, in the comments, all the things in the show notes. And then I also post a book called How to Be an Adult. And this is one that talks about abandonment versus engulfment. And most people have one or the other. Some have both, but usually you have one or the other. And when you read that, all of a sudden you recognize, oh shit, like this is like all my problems. If you're like abandonment or engulfment, you're like, oh my God. But it also teaches you and shows you solutions to that issue. When I did that work, and it took me a year to go through How to Be an Adult and do all the things. Now, it's a super short book. It's like, I think 120 pages or something. But every time I read something and I was like, oh, this is me, I worked on it. And then when I was done working on that, then I continued and continued and continued. It took me 7 months to go through my CODA stuff, a year to go through my abandonment stuff. I tell you, the freedom that I felt, I literally, this is the result. So if you've been listening to this podcast, you've heard me tell the story before. I was standing at my kitchen island in New Richmond, Wisconsin when I lived there, and the sliding glass door was open. The breeze was coming in. It was sunny. It was summer. And I'm standing there and I was just so happy. And I literally asked myself, I'm like, why am I so happy? And my kids were in their rooms and they're like, did you just ask yourself why you're so happy? I'm like, yes, I want more of this. Like, I mean, when we're sad or angry or pissed off or whatever, why am I feeling this way? I ask myself that when I'm happy as well, so that I can duplicate it, so I can replicate it, so I can get more of that. And I was like, why am I so happy? Like, I felt freedom for the whole world was on my shoulders before this, and it was finally off. I felt so free, and I still do, because in doing the work, you recognize you don't have to worry about or think about anybody else but yourself. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, that's being selfish or that's being self-centered. No, it's being self-caring. Why should I be responsible for you and your emotions and your all the things when I've got my own life to deal with, when I've got my own self to explore? Okay? Now, yes, as a parent, you are responsible for the health and well-being of your children, but they're their own little people. They're their own little people that you're there to nurture and allow them that safe space to grow and become who they're meant to become, not who you want them to become. That's a whole other, podcast series. But the key is to just recognize the true freedom truly is in the work that you are avoiding. It truly, truly is. So, and this is literally what the 1 Degree Shift is all about. This is what my book is all about. This is what my platform is all about. It's figuring out, where am I at? Where do I want to be? What's the messy middle? What's the clutter that's getting in the way? What's the clutter that's getting in the way? This is why we address the 9 types of clutter here on the podcast and on this YouTube channel. So whenever we recognize the clutter that is getting in the way, whether it's mindset clutter, environmental clutter, daily clutter, whatever it is, when we recognize a piece of clutter, and avoidance is a huge piece of clutter, when you recognize it and you start to lean into that and get curious and be like, oh, well, that's this. Then you can get really specific and know what exactly the self-work is for you to work on. And like I said, for me, it was codependency. Like, my relationships were just shit. And I was like, all right, I need to figure out what's going on. And I even took communications training. Like, I really wanted to have really healthy relationships. But because that codependent piece was still there, I hadn't identified it yet. They still weren't really good. But once I identified, oh, boom, this is it. And then this led me to, oh, wow, okay, I've got abandonment issues. All right. So dealt with my abandonment issues at the same time I was doing my codependency stuff. when those cleared, all of a sudden, oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Like, I feel so much freedom. I'm with my partner now. We've been together for 5.5 years. If we don't work out, I'm going to be okay. We're not married. We have rings that say, I choose you. Every day we make a conscious effort to choose each other. And if one day I don't choose him or he doesn't choose me, we're just going to move on. Will we be sad? Probably, because he's a great partner. But that's okay. My value, my worth is not tied to anything I own, to any relationship that I have, because I am my own person. He is his own person. My children are their own people. And when you can own and take personal responsibility for your life fully and completely, and recognize all the stuff that is preventing you from having that life that is full of fulfillment and full of joy and full of just that love for life. When you recognize the things that are keeping you from that and you work on them and clear them, game over. Like, life is so freaking good that you can't even, like, oh, I wish you could feel what I feel. I truly, truly do. It's a feeling and it's a freedom that you could never even possibly imagine until you get it. And then it's almost like when you have a child and you feel this massive amount of love wash over you. Like, I told my husband at the time after we had my first son, I'm like, I don't know if I want to try for another son or like another kid, because I don't know if I can love anymore. Like, I actually said, I don't know if I could love anymore. Like, my heart is going to explode because I am so full of it right now. But the thing is when I had my second son, I was like, oh my gosh, that feeling expanded. Like, I can love more. It was massive. And that's what happens when you learn to trust yourself. When you learn what are the things that keep jacking up my life, and instead of running from them, you lean into them. You don't avoid them. You start to say, okay, this is it. I'm just going to deal with it. Once you identify those pieces of self-work, once you identify what you're avoiding, then you can say, okay, now I know exactly how to fix the things that have been messing with my life. Whether it's relationship stuff, whether it's financial stuff, whether it's religious stuff that you've dealt with, whatever. Whether it's, literally anything that you avoid. Anything that you avoid. When you turn and face it head on, and you begin to unpack it, you begin to figure out, where did this come from? Why is this an issue? How long have I been dealing with this? Is this really true? And find the story. Ask all the questions, answer all the things, and keep doing this. Find experts in the fields that specialize in those things that you've been avoiding. And then what happens is it's gone. It clears. It clears. We've talked about dealing with your triggers on this podcast multiple times. And on this YouTube channel, multiple times. Triggers are things that are little hot buttons, okay? Again, when you deal with triggers, things that piss you off, things that throw you over the edge, things that irritate you, things that make you feel offended, things that, all the things, you become free of them. When you recognize them, you deal with them, you disassemble and dismantle them, you become freer than you have ever been or have ever felt in your entire life. And yes, this can be both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, because when you do the self-work of dealing with abandonment issues or addictions or anything else that you've been avoiding, you're going to have to admit this is the issue. But then you're going to feel a little terrified and a little excited at the same time, especially when it clears and you recognize, oh, wow, this thing happened and I'm not triggered. This thing happened and I feel okay. This thing happened and I said something. I didn't avoid it. I didn't brush it under the rug. This truly is the key to lasting freedom in your life once and for all. And if you're still here, if you're still listening to this, if you're still watching this, you know you are ready to have a life of freedom. You know that you are ready to claim this for yourself. You know you're ready. Your time is now. Click the link in the show notes for a single session. Let's talk. Let's also continue this conversation below in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to share your story of learning to trust yourself. Share below. I'll comment. Let's have a conversation in the comments. If you're listening to this on any podcast streaming platform, please email me your comments, flora@florasage.com, so that we can connect in email. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, like, share with your friends, leave a review, all the things. Your support helps this podcast reach more people looking to declutter their lives and align into a life that they are wildly obsessed with. I hope this serves you today. And remember, all it takes is a clear vision of what you want and the willingness to take one small shift in that direction daily to align into a life that you love. I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.